The slap came so fast that the people at the gas station did not understand what they had heard at first. A sharp sound, a woman stumbling, a crowd freezing in shock, and behind it all, Officer Mark Denham stood with his chest puffed and his hands still raised, as if daring the world to question him. He had no idea who he had just struck. Not yet. Not until she slowly lifted her head and everything he thought he knew about this began to crumble. But the story did not begin with the slap. It began 10 minutes earlier, with a woman who had never once imagined her morning would turn into the moment an entire town held its breath. Judge Maya. Williams liked quiet mornings. No attention. No escorts. No extra eyes trailing behind her. Just a simple life in Eastridge, a small Texas town where everyone swore they knew everyone, but never truly did. That morning, Maya buttoned a soft charcoal blazer over a deep green blouse, grabbed a warm cup of tea from a tiny shop near her neighborhood, and walked to her car. Her old 2008 Honda Accord waited for her in its familiar parking spot. The paint was fading. The right mirror was a little shaky, but it was hers. She preferred it over anything fancier. She slid her robe into the back seat and drove off toward the courthouse. She had a hearing scheduled at 9. She did not like being late. She also did not like being noticed. Halfway down Willow Bend Road, she spotted a patrol car creeping behind her. One car back, steady, close, she signaled. Checked her mirrors. Made a careful right turn. Nothing unusual. At least that was what she thought, but then the patrol lights burst into life. A bright flash of red and blue filled her mirrors. Her heartbeat slowed. It's not fear. Just confusion. She pulled into the lot of a small fuel station. The kind where people filled their cars on their way to work. The kind where no one expected to witness anything more intense than spilled coffee. Maya had placed her hands on the wheel at 10 and 2. A practiced gesture. A familiar one. A necessary one. Through the mirror she saw him. A young officer. Strong build. Quick steps. A face already tightened with irritation. As if he had decided something about her long before speaking a single word, he reached her door with a heavy, impatient stride. He did not greet her. He did not explain the stop. Got someplace important you're rushing to? He snapped. His voice carried annoyance, not authority. Maya kept hers calm. Good morning, officer. Can you tell me why I'm being stopped? License and registration, he demanded. No explanation. No courtesy. His hand hovered too close to his holster for a routine stop. Maya nodded and spoke clearly. I'm reaching into my bag for my wallet. Her voice did not shake. Her movements were slow and open, but her calmness only seemed to irritate him more. Quit moving like that. You trying to be funny? He barked. He leaned into her window. His breath carried the bitterness of old coffee and frustration. Maya forced her irritation down. I'm cooperating, sir. Here is my. He yanked her door open. The noise made to people at pump number 3 turn their heads. Get out now. His anger moved faster than reason. Faster than training? Faster than common sense, Maya stepped out with steady movements. Hands visible. Chin lifted just enough to keep control of herself. The moment her feet touched the ground, the world cracked. He slapped her. Across the cheek. The strike echoed off the concrete. A sound sharp enough to silence chatter, still enough to make strangers freeze mid-step. A man holding a breakfast sandwich stopped chewing. A woman with a toddler gripped her child tighter. Someone cursed under their breath. Phones began rising into the air, one after another, like a field of small antennas pointing toward injustice. Maya staggered but stayed upright. Heat burned across her cheek. She tasted the metallic sting of blood at the corner of her mouth. But she did not touch her face. She straightened her posture. Her eyes, dark and unwavering, locked onto him. Officer, she said softly, you just assaulted a sitting judge. A few gasps rippled through the lot. Officer Denham's expression changed in an instant. A flicker. A tremble. A crack in his certainty. Yeah, right, he muttered. His voice stumbled over the words. Maya, Reached into the inside pocket of her blazer. Slow, measured, she pulled out a gold badge. The emblem of the state high court caught the morning sun. A woman across the lot dropped her coffee cup. A man whispered something that sounded like disbelief. Several phones zoomed in. Officer Denham's face drained of color. He stepped back, as if distance might erase what he had done. The energy around them shifted: anger, shock, a rising demand for answers. One man shouted, "You messed up today, officer?" Maya kept her eyes fixed on Denham. Her cheek throbbed. Her jaw ached. But her voice remained steady. "You will answer for this," she said. Denham's hand twitched near his holster. The crowd stepped closer. Not aggressively, but protectively. Like witnesses refusing to be silent, phones stayed raised. No one backed away. A mechanic with grease-stained hands yelled, "Call your supervisor, son." Now. Denham's throat bobbed as he swallowed. He reached for his radio, his fingers trembling, and called for backup. He did not mention what he had done, just called it a disturbance. Maya folded her arms loosely, the badge still visible, her voice calm. "You know who I am? And you know what happens now?" Denham muttered under his breath. "You don't look like a judge." The words slipped out, heavy with everything he did not want to say openly, and the crowd heard it. A woman carrying a toddler stepped closer. "What exactly is a judge supposed to look like?" she snapped. More people murmured, some angry, some stunned, all watching two patrol cars pulled in fast. Doors opened. Officers stepped out with wide eyes, stunned at what they walked into. The scene was no longer a traffic stop. It was a moment that no one could take back. Not the officer. Not the town. Not the system that allowed it. And the next few minutes would tear open something far bigger than any of them expected. A third patrol car rolled into the lot before the first two officers could even reach Maya. The sound of tires scraping against the pavement cut through the rising noise of the crowd. No one moved away. No one lowered their phone. The truth was too important now. Officer Denham stood frozen in place, as if hoping backup would somehow erase what he had done. But the moment the new officers stepped out, their eyes widened at the sight before them. A judge, a bruised cheek, a crowd holding its breath. Maya spoke first. She did not raise her voice. She did not shout. She spoke with the calm strength of someone who had been trained to never rush truth. "Officer Mark Denham assaulted me during a traffic stop," she said. "You are now witnesses." For a heartbeat, no one reacted. Then one of the new officers, a Latino man with sharp eyes, took a step back. His partner whispered something under her breath that sounded like disbelief. Denham shook his head rapidly. "She's lying," he sputtered. "She—" "I didn't know who she was." A teenage boy holding his phone shouted from behind a row of cars. "Doesn't matter. You still hit her." Maya stood tall, despite the hot sting in her cheek. "I identified myself. I explained every movement." He escalated without cause. The female officer cleared her throat and approached slowly. Her name tag read Miller. Her eyes were full of something between fear and sympathy. "Ma'am," Miller asked gently, "are you injured?" Maya inhaled deeply before answering. "Yes, he struck me." The words carried through the lot and pressed against every person listening before Officer Miller could respond. A voice broke through the air from a radio. A firm voice. One that sounded like authority with no patience left. "Lieutenant Carter is en route. 2 minutes." The officer stiffened. The crowd murmured. Even Denham's shoulders sagged. Someone near the pumps whispered, "Oh, he's really in trouble now." Maya felt the ache in her jaw deepen. She kept her gaze forward. Not at Denham. At the officers who still didn't look sure what to do with the truth in front of them. A man in denim overalls stepped forward. He held up his phone like a promise. "It's all on camera," he said. "Everything." From the moment he walked up, Maya looked at him and nodded once. "Thank you," he nodded back, his voice softer than his appearance. "People need to see it." Before anyone else could speak, an unmarked black SUV shot into the lot. The rear tires screeched as the vehicle came to a stop. 2 pigeons lifted into the air. The doors swung open with force. Lieutenant Daniel Carter stepped out. A tall black man with silver starting in his beard, broad shoulders, a stare that could break stone. When Carter saw Maya, he froze. Just for a moment. His jaw tightened so sharply it looked painful. He pushed his way through the small circle of officers around her. "Judge Williams," he said quietly. "Are you hurt?" Maya turned her head slightly so he could see the mark spreading across her cheek. Her skin had begun to swell, dark and angry. Carter inhaled through his nose. Not loudly, but deeply, he turned to Denham. "What did you do?" His tone could have cracked concrete. Denham lifted his hands weakly. "Lieutenant, I didn't know she was a judge." Carter stepped closer. "One more time. What did you do?" Denham's mouth opened and closed like he was drowning on dry land. No answer came. Maya answered for him. "He pulled me out of my car. He slapped me." Before confirming my identity, before offering a reason for the stop, the words were steady, measured. But they carried a weight that no one in that lot could avoid. Carter looked around. The crowd, the phones, the gas station's clear security cameras. The other officers staring at Denham like he had infected the ground they were standing on. Then Carter stretched out his hand toward Denham, badge, and weapon. Now, Denham blinked. "Sir, you can't be serious." Carter didn't blink. He didn't even breathe differently. "You assaulted a high court judge. You have no shield for this. Badge and weapon." Denham's hand shook so badly that the badge nearly slipped from his fingers. He placed it in Carter's open palm. Then his service weapon. Then he stepped back as if someone had pulled the floor out from under him. "Officer." Miller walked to his side and placed one hand on his arm. Not comfort. Control. He didn't resist. He didn't protest. He didn't look at Maya. Carter turned to her, his voice softer now. "Medical is on the way," he said. "I'm deeply sorry." "Make sure this is handled properly." Her voice cracked just slightly. But she straightened again before anyone could focus on it. The man in overalls stepped closer. "I wasn't kidding," he said. "I got the whole thing recorded." I looked at him fully. His worn cap, his tired eyes, his quiet bravery. "Thank you," she said. "I mean it." He nodded. No one should be treated like that. Judge or not, Eames arrived a moment later. A young black woman with a gentle face examined Maya's cheek, her jaw tightening as she worked. Behind them, more people gathered. Workers, parents, teenagers, everyone, drawn in by the storm that had opened over East Ridge. They didn't know it yet, but what they had witnessed would become bigger than a single arrest, bigger than a single officer, bigger than one morning gone wrong. The fire had already started, and there was no stopping where it would spread next. The videos moved fast, faster than anyone expected. And by the time Maya stepped into the police station later that afternoon, an entire town was already buzzing with outrage and disbelief. She had not chosen any of this, but she was now at the center of a story the whole country would soon hear, and it was only beginning. The police station felt louder than usual the moment Maya stepped inside. Phones rang without pauses. Officers whispered too quietly for their own nerves. Someone rushed past carrying folders like the building was on fire. Maya sat in a small interview room with a flickering light and a cup of stale water. The adrenaline from earlier had faded, replaced by a heavy fatigue that sat behind her ribs. Her cheek throbbed with every breath. Lieutenant Carter moved in and out of the room, like a man carrying the weight of an entire department on his shoulders. Every time he returned, his expression was tighter. "They're calling it a major violation," said finally, sitting across from her. "A gross failure of duty. The Attorney General wants a full investigation. The FBI has been notified." Maya nodded slowly. "Good," she said. "It should be." Carter rubbed the bridge of his nose and leaned back. "The mayor wants to meet you. The city council, too." "I'm not interested in smoothing their nerves," Maya replied. "They're scared this will look bad on them." "That's not my concern." Carter gave a humorless half-smile. Didn't think it would be. He stood to answer a knock at the door. A young officer with a fresh buzz cut leaned in. Lieutenant, you need to see this. Carter walked out, but Maya followed closely behind him. At the front desk, 3 mounted TVs played a local news channel. A reporter stood outside the gas station with a microphone. The headlines scrolled across the bottom in bold letters. Judge assaulted during traffic stop. Video sparks outrage across East Ridge. They showed the clip. The slap, the crowd's uproar. The badge in Maya's hand? Officer Denham's face turning sheet white. People in the lobby froze. Even some officers. No one spoke. Then a second clip aired. Officer Denham being led out of the station in handcuffs. No sunglasses. No bravado. No escape. The footage shook Maya more than she expected. Not because she pitied him. Not because she wanted revenge, but because she knew the world was watching, and she had become the center of something she did not choose. Internal affairs arrived within the hour. A woman named Rebecca Hale introduced herself briskly and handed over a preliminary report. Her voice was sharp, controlled, almost cold. Excessive force. Failure to verify identity. Violation of civil rights, she listed. This will move fast. Too much public attention? Maya skimmed the report. It said exactly what she knew it would. Hale paused. Most cases like this disappear. Not this one. Tension fades, Maya said. Justice shouldn't. Hal gave her a rare nod of respect. Later, escorted by 2 plainclothes officers, Maya stepped outside onto the front steps of the station. She stopped. Across the street, a crowd stood holding candles. Not shouting, not chanting, just standing. Some held small signs. Stand with Maya, justice for all, no more silence. Teenage girl broke from the group and approached her carefully. She stopped a few feet away. I just wanted to say, the girl whispered, her voice shaking. You're really brave. Maya felt something in her chest shift. Warm, soft, painful in a different way. You're brave too, she said. The girl's eyes widened, and she hurried back to the group. Maya stood still, taking in the sight. She hadn't asked for any of this. She had only wanted to hear a case, drink her tea, and move through her day without being seen. But quiet days were gone now. The next morning, the news had exploded far beyond the town. Cable shows debated what happened. Radio callers argued. Some angry, some heartbroken, some disturbingly defensive. Maya sat at her kitchen table with a cooling mug of black coffee beside her laptop. Clip after clip replayed the moment she was struck. Her own face stared back at her, bruised, steady, exposed to the world. Emails flooded her inbox. Law students, civil rights groups, other judges. Even a retired farmer from Kansas who wrote, You stood your ground. Wish I had half your strength. Keep going. Maya closed her eyes and breathed in slowly. She had not wanted to become a symbol, but she could no longer stop it. Her phone buzzed. A familiar name appeared. Aaron Grant, an old friend from law school, now a professor in Missouri. The moment she answered, his voice cracked. Maya, I saw the footage. I can't believe what I watched. I'm fine, Aaron. No, he said gently. You're holding it together. That's different. She stared at her untouched coffee. What do the students think? They're furious, he said. They're organizing meetings, letters, peaceful protests. They want to support you. Maya felt a quiet warmth beneath the bruising. Tell them to stay calm, she said. Their voices are stronger when they're steady. After the call, she turned on her TV. A live shot from outside the courthouse filled the screen. People were gathered again. More than yesterday. Signs held high. Faces both young and old, standing shoulder to shoulder. An older black woman with a wide-brimmed hat spoke into a microphone. This is about dignity, she said. Dignity that should never depend on a title. Maya leaned back in her chair. Something trembled in her chest. Not fear. Not anger. A rising sense that she was no longer standing alone. Across town, Rumors spread that Denham had hired a high-profile attorney from Dallas. Some TV hosts were already speculating that he'd claim he feared for his life. Maya closed her eyes at that. She'd heard the excuse too many times. Too many cases lost to loopholes and fear-soaked claims. But this time, too many people had seen. Too many angles. Too much truth. A knock at her door pulled her back. 2 detectives stood outside. One was a tall black man with a warm smile and a Memphis accent. "Judge Williams," he said kindly. "I'm Detective Jordan. We're here for your safety." "Things are heated." Maya nodded. "Thank you." He tapped his badge lightly. "We got your back. No one is touching you again, for the first time in days." Her chest eased just a little, but she knew the hardest part was still ahead. The truth had sparked a fire. And soon, the courtroom would become the place where everything came to a head, where the town would demand answers, where justice would either rise or fall, and Maya was walking straight into the center of it. The courthouse felt different that day, heavier, tighter, as if the walls themselves were holding their breath. Maya sat in the front row, not behind the bench, not in her robe, not in her seat of authority. Today, she was a witness, and the weight of that was colder than she expected. 2 attorneys from the state's judicial committee sat beside her. They reviewed documents, whispered strategy, but Maya focused on the steady throb in her cheek, still faintly bruised beneath a layer of makeup. She applied with a hand that shook more than she wanted to admit. Across the room sat Mark Denham. No uniform, no badge. Just a wrinkled suit that made him look smaller than he had at the gas station. His eyes stayed glued to the table as if something inside him had cracked, and he didn't know how to hold himself together, eh? Woman with sharp features and a perfectly ironed blazer sat beside him. His attorney, Clara Whitfield. Cold eyes, cool voice, a defense that looked ready to bend the truth however it needed to. Judge Ruth Dawson, borrowed from a neighboring county, entered the courtroom with a presence that demanded silence. She was known for her no-nonsense decisions and a stare that could burn through excuses like dry paper. Court is now in session. Every head lifted. Every whisper died. The prosecutor stood first. A man with gentle eyes, but a voice like steel when he needed it. He began with the facts. The footage. The witnesses. The lack of justification for the stop. The slap. The comment Denham made. The failure to follow protocol. With each point, the courtroom stiffened. Even Denham's lawyer scribbled faster. Then it was Maya's turn. She stood slowly, her legs steady, but her hands cold. A clerk handed her the Bible. She placed her palm against it. Her heart beat loud in her ears. "I swear to tell the truth." Folded her hands and stared straight ahead. "Judge Williams," the prosecutor began. "Can you describe what happened the morning of the incident?" Maya inhaled through her nose, slow and controlled. "I was driving to the courthouse," she began. "I was not speeding. I signaled every turn. I followed protocol. I noticed the patrol car behind me. The lights went on. I pulled over." She continued with clarity. She described Mark Denham's approach. His tone, his refusal to explain the stop, his hand on his belt, his impatience, his anger, her calm explanations, the sudden order to exit the vehicle, and then she described the slap. The room went so silent that she could hear someone. In the back shift in their chair, my cheek hit the air before I understood what happened, she said. It was not a misunderstanding. It was not an accident. It was force meant to humiliate. Denham stared at the floor. He did not lift his eyes once. Maya continued. I told him who I was. He did not believe me. He made a comment about my appearance. Do you recall the exact comment? The prosecutor asked. He said I didn't look like a judge. A few murmurs rippled through the courtroom. Judge Dawson lifted her hand sharply, and silence returned. The prosecutor nodded. Thank you, Judge Williams. When Maya stepped down, her legs felt heavy, but she did not stumble. She refused to. Then it was the defense's turn. Clara. Whitfield rose with a cold smile that did not reach her eyes. "Ladies and gentlemen," she began. Officer Denham feared for his safety. He believed he was dealing with a potentially dangerous individual who refused to comply. "Objection," Maya's attorney said instantly. "Mischaracterizing testimony," sustained. Judge Dawson snapped. "Stick to the facts, Ms. Whitfield." Whitfield pressed her lips together and tried again. But her arguments had no spine, no evidence, no support, too many witnesses, too many recordings. To clear a truth, when closing arguments wrapped up, the judge did not step away to deliberate for long. She returned in under an hour. The courtroom stiffened. Mark Denham looked up for the first time. His eyes wide like a man hoping a miracle might appear out of thin air. Judge Dawson held no softness in her face. "This court finds the defendant guilty," she said. "Battery, abuse of authority, and violation of civil rights under color of law." Gasps, whispers, relief, fury, shock. The room became a storm of emotions. Denham slumped back in his seat, his hands trembling. Not a hero, not a protector, just a man facing the consequences he thought would never come. Sentencing would come later. But the verdict was final. Outside, cameras crowded the steps. Microphones pushed forward. People waited for Maya to speak. Some angry, some crying, some hopeful. She could have walked straight to the car waiting for her. She could have avoided the noise, but she remembered the teenage girl holding a candle, the mechanic who stood with her that morning, the emails, the crowded courthouse steps, so she stepped forward. "My name is Judge Maya Williams," she said. "And what happened to me happens to too many people who do not have power or a title to shield them." The reporters leaned closer. "I am grateful for the support. But gratitude is not the goal. Justice is a right, not a privilege. And until everyone receives that right, none of us are protected." No shouting, no dramatics. Just truth. Maya stepped away, leaving cameras scrambling to follow her words. That night, she sat on her porch with the warm Texas air settling around her shoulders. Her phone buzzed again. Another message. This time from a young woman in Alabama. "Thank you for fighting. I'm applying to law school because of you. Keep going." Maya set her phone down and stared at the stars. She didn't choose this fight, but she wasn't walking away from it either. And the next chapter was already forming in the air around her. Bigger than a verdict? Bigger than a slap? Bigger than one officer? A movement had begun, and she was part of it now. Weeks later, Maya found herself standing at the foot of the Texas High Court building in Austin. The sunrise caught the pale stone of the building and painted it gold. A calm morning, a new beginning. But she wasn't here for celebration. She had agreed, with hesitation, to attend a ceremony honoring public servants who had shown courage under pressure. She didn't feel like a hero. She didn't feel brave. She felt tired, changed, and still carrying the sting of everything that had unfolded. Her robe brushed against her ankles as she stepped toward the small stage that had been set up outside the building. No crowds chanting. No reporters shouting questions. Just families, students, community leaders, people who came not for the ceremony, but to hear her voice. Maya inhaled slowly, gripping the edges of the podium. Her heartbeat was calm this time, steady, anchored by something deeper than fear. She looked out over the group. Children perched on shoulders. Elderly neighbors holding small American flags. Young people with notebooks, eager to hear something that mattered. She began, "I have sat in many courtrooms," she said. "And if there is one thing I have learned, it is that justice is not automatic. It does not fall from the sky just because we believe in it." She paused. Not for effect. To let herself breathe. To let the truth gather strength. "Justice lives in the small choices we make every day," she continued. "It grows when we choose dignity over pride. When we choose honesty over comfort. When we choose to see each other as human beings first." A quiet murmur moved through the crowd. Heads nodded. Some eyes glistened. Maya's gaze drifted to the front row. a young boy, maybe 10, leaning forward with both hands gripping his mother's arm, listening as if her words were the only ones he had ever needed. "I did not survive that traffic stop because of my title," she said softly. "My robe did not protect me. My position did not shield me. I survived because I refused to let someone else determine my worth." She looked directly at the boy. He straightened, chest rising with a confidence she hoped would follow him for the rest of his life. "The world did not change overnight because of what happened to me," she said. "Real change is slow. It stumbles. It gets pushed back. But it moves forward when we push with it." Near the edge of the crowd stood the older woman in the wide-brimmed hat who had spoken at the courthouse weeks earlier. She gave Maya a quiet nod, a nod full of history, full of battles that came long before this one. "I am not here because I am special," Maya said. "I am here because I had a chance to speak, and I chose to take it." She leaned forward, her voice lowering, but not losing its strength. "And every one of you," she said, looking across the gathering, "has that same chance. Every single day, in moments that seem small, in moments when no one is watching." The boy in the front row smiled, wide and bright, hopeful, unafraid. Maya finished with one final truth. Choose courage. Choose dignity. Choose to stand, even when sitting feels safer. Because when you stand, you give others permission to stand too. The applause didn't explode. It began softly, naturally, and then grew. A steady wave of sound that wrapped around her like warmth after a long winter. People lined up afterward, some shaking her hand, some hugging her, some simply placing a hand over their heart before stepping away. Maya stayed until every person had left. Every thank you, every tear, every story shared in quiet voices. She accepted them all. As the sun dipped low over the Austin skyline, Maya gathered her things and walked toward the parking lot. Her old Honda waited for her, the same dented door, the same rattling engine. A piece of her old life still intact. She slipped behind the wheel, took a long breath, and smiled to herself. Not because everything was fixed, not because justice had magically healed the wounds beneath her skin, but because she understood something now. The fight she never asked for had grown into something she could no longer ignore. And she wasn't fighting alone. Not anymore. Across the state, across the country, people had heard her story, and somewhere inside them, something had shifted. A little more awareness, a little more bravery, a little more willingness to stand when it mattered. Maya placed her keys into the ignition and glanced at the road ahead. The work was far from over. It would be slow and hard and exhausting, but she was ready. The world didn't need statues or speeches. It needed people who refused to stay silent, and Maya Williams was no longer silent. If someone out there needed hope, she wanted to be the reason they found it. She turned the key. The engine hummed, and with steady hands and a clear mind, she drove forward into the future she was determined to help build.